Caitlin Clark could barely hide her frustration as she sat in front of the cameras, her voice steady but her eyes revealing the storm inside. She talked about how physical the series had been, how it felt like she'd spent more time on the floor than standing upright. Her words weren't excuses, they were a warning. Heading into Game 3 of the WNBA semifinals against the Las Vegas Aces, the Indiana Fever weren't just preparing for another basketball game. They were preparing for a fight, because Game 2 wasn't basketball in the pure sense of the word. It was chaos packaged as competition, and Clark knew it. The Fever had not been outplayed. They had been out-whistled, dragged into a mud-soaked contest where talent, rhythm, and skill were suffocated under the weight of a whistle that never seemed to blow the same way twice. 41 fouls in total. 16 in one quarter. Players sprawled on the hardwood after nearly every possession. And yet somehow, the narrative belonged to A'ja Wilson, hailed as the conquering hero, her stat sheet glowing with points and rebounds. But box scores lie. Wilson's numbers were born in chaos, inflated by whistles that gave her the freedom to bulldoze her way through defenders without fear of reprisal. Meanwhile, Lexie Hull played through a back injury so severe she probably shouldn't have suited up at all. She was shoved, battered, sent to the ground, and still delivered 5 three-pointers, tying a Fever playoff record. That wasn't just scoring. That was defiance, a declaration that Indiana wouldn't bow to officiating or intimidation. Hull's performance was grit personified, and yet the headlines praised Wilson while Hull left the court bruised and sore, her body held together by the relentless work of trainers. This was the problem. This was why Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and every Fever player carried a fire into Game 3. Because Game 1 had already shown the truth of who they were. That night in Vegas wasn't just a win. It was a dismantling of the Aces' aura. Kelsey Mitchell dropped 34 points, seizing the spotlight and refusing to let it go. The Fever played with discipline, composure, and control, holding Wilson to a miserable 6 makes on 22 shots. They blew out the two-time defending champs by 16 on their own court. The league's golden franchise had been exposed, and the Fever had sent a message that echoed far beyond the final buzzer. But Game 2 flipped the script. The Aces didn't adjust with cleaner execution. They adjusted by dragging Indiana into the dirt, and the referees let them. That's what made this so bitter. Indiana didn't stumble because they lacked answers. They stumbled because every trip down the floor was fractured into fragments of broken possessions. Steph White, the Fever's head coach, said it best. It's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul called every 10 seconds. Offense is built on rhythm, spacing, and timing, and Indiana had all of that stripped away. Aaliyah Boston fought like a warrior, grabbing 13 rebounds, but every board was an ordeal of elbows and body shots. Her 10 points weren't quiet contributions. They were scars earned in the trenches. Odyssey Sims, too, found ways to create against suffocating pressure, dropping 18 points even as the whistle killed momentum every time the Fever began to surge. What those numbers didn't show was the bruising, the frustration, and the exhaustion of playing not just the Aces, but the officials as well. And then there was Mitchell. Vegas had learned their lesson from Game 1. They face-guarded her, sent multiple defenders, and treated every cut like a collision drill. She wasn't shut down because her game vanished. She was shackled by sheer physical denial. Her 13 points weren't proof of failure. They were the cost of being targeted every single possession. Becky Hammon, even in victory, admitted afterward that the physicality was excessive, a rare crack in the polished coach speak that only underscored what fans already knew. This wasn't skill on display. It was desperation masked as toughness, which is why Gainbridge Fieldhouse now looms as the great equalizer. In Vegas, the whistles silenced Indiana's rhythm. In Indianapolis, silence won't exist. 17,000 fans, angry and energized, will amplify every shove, every foul, every missed call, until referees can no longer pretend not to see. Home court isn't just a venue. It's a weapon. The Fever's fans have proven it all season, erasing double-digit deficits and fueling comeback wins with noise that rattles even the steadiest opponents. And now, after watching their team robbed in Game 2, they'll be louder than ever. For Lexie Hull, it means playing through pain with a roar behind her every time she hits the floor. For Boston, it means every rebound will be greeted like a knockout punch. For Mitchell, silenced in Game 2, it means rediscovering her scoring rhythm in a building that chants her name before she even touches the ball. And for Caitlin Clark, sidelined with fire in her eyes, it means leading with the kind of energy that ignites a locker room and a fan base all at once. That's why Game 3 is more than just another matchup. It's a pivot point. The Fever aren't coming home to survive. They're coming home to strike back. to reclaim control and to prove that Game 2 was not about their weaknesses, but about the league's failure to let basketball be played fairly. Vegas may have needed whistles and bruises to scrape out a win. Indiana only needs one thing: their crowd. Because in Gainbridge Fieldhouse, the Fever don't just play games. They stage revolutions, and so the stage is set. The Aces believe they have momentum, but what they really have is a problem. They've awakened a fan base, enraged a team, and exposed their own desperation. Game 3 will decide more than just a series lead. It will decide whether the league can ignore the credibility questions hanging over it, or whether the Fever will force the spotlight back where it belongs, on basketball, on grit, and on the undeniable truth that this Indiana team is ready to rewrite history. If you're riding with Indiana in this fight, drop "Go Fever" in the comments. Do you think the officials robbed the Fever in Game 2? Can Gainbridge Fieldhouse swing this series back in their favor? Let us know below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter of this playoff drama.